Rhythm games and hack and slash games. These two very defined genres seem to be fated to always be separate from each other and never have a way to connect. And if you're anything like me, the idea of the two genres creating any harmony has never crossed your mind. But despite all of that, there was one man who had this idea, and believed that with enough love for a project by the team behind it, and creating a cult, a game that combines these two titans of the industry could become something incredible, and after 2 years of development by Tango GameWorks, in January of 2023 they achieved that, and they gave us Hi-Fi Rush. As a whole was just jam-packed with bangers after bangers of game. Dead Space Remake, Resident Evil 4 Remake, Tears of the Kingdom, Armored Core 6, Skull Island Rise of Kong, where the game can just be beaten with a simple jump that skips 80% of the game and it looks like this. Game of the Year material right there. So with all these set to release or already released having the hype of the whole world around them, to introduce a new IP with such a bizarre idea like this from a team that is known for making survival or horror games like Evil Within would be a huge risk for not only Bethesda, the owners of Tango at the time, but also for Tango themselves. For any of this to work out, literally everything in this idea would have to run perfectly. Luckily for Tango and Bethesda, they had some geniuses on the team who could do just that. Meet John Johanas, originally a translator for Tango GameWorks and became a designer for Evil Within. His talents as a designer led him to assume the role of director for Evil Within DLC episodes and Evil Within 2. This man has a stacked resume on him with games and DLC with positive reception from everywhere rating them. However, in 2018, Johanas had a feeling it was a good time to take a risk and make a new IP for Tango and Bethesda, and work with Yuji Nakamura to create a pitch for a weird game idea where it's an action hack and slash and a rhythm game combined into one. Games like these existed at the time, but Johanas had an idea for the game that would set it apart from other action rhythm games like Crypto the Necrodancer, where instead of the beats of the song being the only chance the players have to do anything in the game really, instead what he chose to do is have every action that the player does in the game sync to the beat of the song no matter what. Whether or not you timed it right has no effect on whether or not you could play the game this way. His main reason for it was that in other action rhythm games, if you had a bad sense of rhythm, you couldn't really play the game. Not that it's a bad thing for games like this, but Johanas wanted more than just one group of gamers to play a game like this, so he made this decision to do so. With the concept in mind, Johanas went to work on making a pitch document going into as much detail as possible to try to sell the game idea to Bethesda and Shinji Mikami, the founder of Tango GameWorks. But Nakamura was worried that a simple pitch of such a bizarre game wouldn't work with Bethesda. After all, Bethesda and Tango were well known for making more serious and mature games like The Elder Scrolls and Evil Within. So they both decided to make a prototype of the game, with the 9 Inch Nails song as the music, and used a gray box version of what would become the first boss in the game. But before they even pitched the game idea to Bethesda, this prototype of the game went around the office in one way or another, leading to many people in Bethesda giving the prototype of this new weird funky IP a try, and a huge positive reception and a small cult following of the prototype was started in the office. With a, "Hey, did you try out the prototype of this weird game that Johanas and Nakamura made? It's actually really fucking cool." And that was all being said back and forth between people in the office. And because of this cult following that Johanas and Nakamura accidentally created, when Johanas went to properly pitch the game to Bethesda, they already knew about the game and were willing to give it a shot. And of course, Shinji Mikami was also willing to give the game a whirl, because Shinji Mikami is a Chad that is known for greenlighting many new IPs that are completely different than what is seen before in the industry. This is the same Shinji Mikami who saw the first draft of Resident Evil 4 was some crazy action game, and instead of scrapping what was there altogether, instead just told Kamiya to forget about the Resident Evil aspect and make Devil May Cry with what they have instead. So after a few years of development, the game was finally ready to launch, but the public had no idea that it even existed. This project was kept in the background for years, and so instead of trying to market a game that was so different from Tango's past works, they instead chose to make a crazy decision and just shadow drop the game. So they threw out a launch trailer for the game and launched it on Game Pass along with the other platforms it was on, like Steam and just normal Xbox. So when the public saw this game, they could just immediately give it a try without risking any money commitment because of Game Pass. Game Pass was basically responsible for this game's existence. And so everybody gave this new weird Hi-Fi Rush game a try, and what they got absolutely blew them away. Almost instantly, this game was flooded with positive reviews from everywhere. Thousands and thousands of people giving this game a try on Game Pass and getting hooked immediately. The Shadow Drop gave no time for the public to question why a studio known for survival horror games was making an upbeat action music game, and it worked out in Tango's favor. The insanely good music, like they got fucking glass pyramids and 9-inch nails in this game. The flashy and play with music combat. The art style being some nice anime but comic book-like looking thing. The identity of this game was simply captivating, and it made the game so hard to put down. But what exactly about Hi-Fi Rush made the public experience the game like this? Well, grab some popcorn, my friend, as we take a look at Hi-Fi Rush and what it did to catch the world off guard with its harmonic greatness. The game opens up on Chai, the man on the front cover and our game's protagonist, a 25-year-old who dreams of being a world-famous rock star. However, this man does not know how to play guitar and is straight up just unemployed. So to make some extra cash, he fakes a broken arm and signs up for Project Armstrong, this new high-tech robot arm designed to enhance human capabilities. However, when Chai's getting moved around on the conveyor belt to get his new arms, the founder of Project Armstrong, Kale, is disappointed with who the test subjects are, and in his annoyance, he throws Chai's MP3 player off the walkway above Chai, and it lands directly onto him when he gets compressed. The MP3 player fuses it into him, and he is officially labeled a defect in the system. But when the robot employees go to take Chai in with a love tap, something starts to happen. Suddenly, the beat of the music starts kicking in harder and harder. And then, some cool shit starts happening.
Got him!
Hi-Fi Rush's combat is a very simple premise. Every action the player can do is tied to the music. As said earlier in the video, Johanas didn't want to restrict people from being able to play and enjoy Hi-Fi Rush because of a poor sense of rhythm. So instead of requiring player actions to be on beat in order to actually play, instead if you do an attack off beat, then Chai will wait with a little bit of a dance until the beat actually hits to do his attack. It's a really genius way to allow more player accessibilities to those with no good sense of rhythm. With that being said, it doesn't mean you shouldn't try to hit on the beat, because when you do, hits are 50% more powerful. The critics among you may wonder if that's even possible to do while playing the game, because generally, video game music is a nice background thing to have, when while people do often appreciate the music, it's not exactly something you entirely focus on in games. They aren't meant to be fully paid attention to while you play the game because you're playing the video game. But Hi-Fi Rush has that covered in so many ways. For starts, the music can get really fucking loud. Turn it down. Turn it down. God, it's so fucking... One of the real ways the game has got you covered is not just to have you pay attention to the music more, but also make it pretty easy to hit the beat every time it does. The entire world of Hi-Fi Rush, not just Chai, is tied to the music. Steam pipes in the background jam to the music, enemies walk and attack to the beat of the music. To put all of this in shorter terms, the world is your metronome. Also, meet 808, the cat of one of the characters named Peppermint, who can morph into a little ball and emits a blue light to the beat of the music. I have a bit of a confession for you guys. I'm really fucking bad at subtle segues, so let's just jump into the attacks and shit like that. Fuck you. There are a total of 2 attack buttons in Hi-Fi Rush, a light attack and a heavy attack. And because this is still holding rhythm game DNA inside of it, the attacks also have a beat to it. The light attack can hit on every beat to the music, while the heavy attack takes 2 beats to hit, but in turn does more damage. It's the standard beat 'em up control scheme, but with a music element. And that identity sticks even more when you look at the combos you can do. To say that there are a lot of combos in Hi-Fi Rush would be the same as saying that your dad's hemorrhoid really wasn't that bad. The game refers to them as attacks, and because I'm a bandwagon, I also will. The attacks list in the shop is stacked full of attacks you're able to pull off with a little bit of in-game money. But how do they work? Every attack in the game has a set of button combos to go with it. Pull off these combos properly and then the standard Osu circle will pop up for Chai to do an attack that does a lot more heavy damage. There are plenty of viable attacks to choose from and not all of them are equal in damage, but instead they do some fun things to the enemies. Some push enemies further away from the player, but my personal favorites are the aerial attacks. Yeah, I played Devil May Cry, and keeping enemies in the air and attacking them from there is the best way to feel cool while duking it out with the robots. I wouldn't say Hi-Fi Rush has a bunch of different playstyles to it though, because all trying to play in a keep your distance playstyle will do is give you a D rank in every arena. Rather, I would say that the game has different ways to play a specific style. I promise that means something else, I'm not just talking nonsense. While the attacks from combos already feel like they should be called special attacks in Hi-Fi Rush are already their own thing. These are cool, but aren't really special at all and definitely take a step back from the rest of the combat system. Basically, to sum it all up, there's a meter that fills up whenever you attack, and once that meter fills up, you can let out a special attack that, if timed right, does a powerful attack that half the time doesn't even fucking kill the enemy. Don't get me wrong, the move is still very useful, they often deal a hell of a lot of damage, but to say that they are a vital part of the combat sequence would be giving the system a bit too much credit for what it's worth. But I'm not gonna say that this is a bad thing to add, because they are still pretty fun. But all of what I described, if you remove the rhythm aspect, could describe any hack and slash and you can get away with it. The entire time I could have been talking about fucking God of War and slapping Hi-Fi Rush footage in the background for no reason and you would not have noticed. But remember when I said a little bit ago, the world is your metronome? That extends past the player. The world is also the world's metronome. To help explain this, I need you to take a look at Chai's feet. Keep your fucking pants up, dude. You're so fucking weird, bro. Bro! Now, pay real close attention to the song that's playing. Do you see that? The beat and Chai's footsteps perfectly line up. Okay, now do the exact same thing with the robot's walk cycle. It walks to the beat of the music. The enemies are tied to the beat of the music as well as the player, meaning that a little bit earlier in the video that I said that the game incentivizes you to understand that the beat still applies here. If you pay attention to the beat of the music at all times and just keep that in your head, trust me, it isn't that difficult, then you can predict every single time an enemy will attack you, because it's safe to assume that they will attack you on the beat of the song because they have to. And if you need more help on that, the game winds up their attacks to the beat of the music too. So keep that beat in your head, because once the wind up starts, you have to know that the next beat or two you're going to get swung at or shot at, which means either stun them, get out of the way, or parry the attack. The music of Hi-Fi Rush really does achieve Johannas' goal of making you feel like you're playing with the music rather than to the music, with the whole world of the game joining together in harmony to make me feel like I'm playing some anime version of John Wick. That is, until it doesn't. Here is a picture of the average meal a hater of fire in video games eats every day. Look how divine that is. Absolutely delicious. So finely crafted. Mwah. Chef's kiss. And then, here is the meal of an average enjoyer of fire in video games eats every day. It's the same meal, but I took a massive shit on it because fuck you. There are a total of 3 things in Hi-Fi Rush that cannot be parried that damage you. Electricity, falling into a pit, and fire. The first 2 get a pass on this because electricity is only from the environment and still has a rhythm to it whenever it activates, so it gives you time to avoid it. And if you don't know why avoid gets a pass, then just try parrying the ground when you jump off the Grand Canyon and then come back to me. But the fact that fire can't be parried just pisses me off so much, because in any other game I'd give this a pass because the classic, yeah, no shit, dumbass. But this game, is kinda silly and lets you parry fucking volcanoes. The keen among you may realize the problem with my critique here, and I sorta see it too, which is why I'm still talking about this. The volcano eruption is mechanically a projectile to the game, and fires a piece of the environment, so it will damage you because of the same reason electricity would. Which, I agree with you. Minus the fact that these stupid ass robots shoot fire, and unless I'm only terrible at parrying in this game's context of this, you can't parry the shit. And to make matters worse, instead of Chai just taking the hit from the fire like a man, instead he starts running around like a fucking headless chicken, and you have to jerk off your controller to get that to stop. I feel like this wouldn't be as big of an issue if it weren't for the fact that every other bit of this game is in such perfect harmony with each other that this one small issue really stands out. But realistically, that doesn't matter too much. Other than the one standout problem, Hi-Fi Rush's combat is some of the best in the genre, and fighting with the music really does make me feel like I'm in some cool John Wick anime scene. The combat is the obvious highlight of Hi-Fi Rush, and is basically the reason you'd want to play the game. And then there's the platforming. Get that shit out of here. Hi-Fi Rush's platforming is nothing special. There's no combat in these platforming sections, and realistically, it's only about a third of your playthrough, so it's not like it's taking up the entire game. Don't get me wrong, the platforming is decent fun. It's the standard platforming, jump from platforms, but it's not like there's some cool movement here like Mario 64 or something like that. So, the actual platforming seems to be taking a backseat in the whole experience. If you ask me, the platforming is not the main reason that the platforming is there. Rather, there's some secret, hidden reason for it that you might not notice until you look more into it. While platforming doesn't have much substance to it in the grand scheme of things, there's a good reason that it's there. It's very good downtime to flesh out the characters in the game. Throughout the story of Hi-Fi Rush, Chai meets a small group of tech wizards that have some sort of connection to Armstrong, but are against the corruption that is in the company now. Peppermint is the first and oldest member of this team that we meet, and while she never is working at Armstrong, she has some secret reason as to why she wants to take down the company, along with the fact that she's best girl. Turns out it's some brother complex or some shit. Macaron was a former employee of Armstrong who was there because of the false promises the owner Kale made to the company, and he watched as Project Armstrong went from something that could be great to something that is heavily corrupt, and Macaron wishes to put a stop to it. He's the bubby of the group. You know, the gym bro that could rip you apart in seconds, but is the sweetest guy you'll ever meet. He even has a robot partner named Cinnamon. He's adorable. He draws little expressions on his face to show emotion. It's great. And then there's Corsica. She, for the majority of the game, is the head of the security of the Project Armstrong, but she soon finds out that Kale's been keeping her out of some crucial data related to Armstrong. Because super top secret information, the real goal behind Project Armstrong is to mind control the subjects so Kale could have complete control over society in some utopia-style fashion. But they don't tell Corsica any of that because they know that if she finds out, she would immediately switch sides, and with some wide words from our gamer squads absolutely kicking her ass, that she joins our side and allows us to achieve our goal. All of these characters in Hi-Fi Rush have some great interactions with each other, as they're not just people in the game. We can call them during combat to help us in fights and platforming in one way or another. But the point I'm trying to make is that while some of the time to flesh out the characters is through cutscene, a good majority of the interactions with the characters are during the platforming segments when there's downtime for it. Whether it's Chai making a stupid ass pun and everyone mocking him for it, or Peppermint having a plan of action but then Chai messes it up in one way or another and they all yell at him for his improvisation. Basically, all of these interactions are through platforming, which allow the game to bring character into the world without forcing like 50 unskippable cutscenes on your ass. The fact that at the beginning of every mission in Hi-Fi Rush there's a mission report with a thoroughly laid out plan crafted by Peppermint or Corsica, but then damn near every single time something goes wrong because of Chai and all of that is tossed out the window, is a prime example of the character that this world has. The world is designed for everything to work out but in the wrong way. And that's not just for the protagonists. Something always goes wrong for the antagonists too. Not just them getting team rocketed every time, but also something just doesn't always go right for them and it plays out in a very comedic fashion, but they always make the situation work. The protagonists, not the antagonists. The antagonists get fucking butt fucked all over the place. For example, the boss Zanzo, one of the top dog Armstrong guys that we were trying to steal a password from to stop the mind control shit, and he is a huge fan of flashiness and brings big gestures to look menacing. So his boss fight, which is basically just platforming and combat with everybody in the room but him, but that's because he has a budget like a filmmaker, and our goal to defeat him is to agitate him enough to use up his whole budget on him. And at the end of the level, that's exactly what happens. He's building this whole set piece robot. All of a sudden, he runs out of money from his budget, and the boss fight just fucking goes anticlimactic for him, and his robot never even turns on. This is just one example of the world of Hi-Fi Rush being designed for something not to work out for everyone that lives in it, and it's a theme present throughout the entire game. And all the bosses are unique like this. You fight a boss that takes place on a concert stage, and the fight is themed around the fact that you're on a concert stage. There's a Budokai style fight with Corsica before she joins your team, where you're supposed to, instead of fighting back, you just parry every single one of her attacks to piss her off enough. At the end of the game, one of the final bosses, you literally take out this giant fucking Persona robot guy, and you even fight him in a Scrooge McDuck coin gold vault, whatever the fuck. I'm tweaking right now. It's fucking impressive how Hi-Fi Rush will take whatever themes that are present and go all out on them with this crazy idea, and it never misses its mark. And the character of the world of Hi-Fi Rush goes past the protagonists and antagonists. Every single robot you talk to has something silly to say. I think my favorite moment of this is when, at the beginning of the game, there's this little hint robot that just basically just bothers the fuck out of you, trying to get you to read one of his hints, and if you ignore him enough, which I always do because I don't care, he goes up to you for the third time after following you everywhere and just says, fuck you, I'm not telling you shit anymore. And then that's that. He doesn't actually help. It's fucking hilarious. I think an underrated part of game development and game design in general is the idea of taking an idea for a game and extending that as far as you can. And once you do, you then roll credits before it overstays its welcome. You see this constantly in the indie scene, but rarely in AAA games does this come up. But for Hi-Fi Rush, I think this is very prominently shown, because the concept for Hi-Fi Rush was basically action hack and slash where your actions play along with the music. Also, the world has a silly element to it. And because of this design mentality, Hi-Fi Rush never overstays its welcome. You guys know that whole thing of like, pay developers more to work less to make a smaller but more enjoyable game. That's basically what's happening here. Hi-Fi Rush is a small game, especially for a AAA team, but ultimately I believe the marketing of this game and the game itself really brought Hi-Fi Rush to a success, and the team was discussing the idea of a sequel at some point because of how well Hi-Fi Rush did in everything. So why the fuck did Xbox shut down Tango GameWorks? In May of 2024, Xbox shut down a bunch of Bethesda-owned studios, including Tango GameWorks, because of some stupid-ass reason that nobody understood, aside from maybe fucking Starfield 2 or something like that. This left everyone in confusion, because Hi-Fi Rush did exceptionally well and won awards in 2023 for Best Audio Design and Best Animation. So when we got this stupid white box over black text saying that Tango was shut down, the reactions were both pissed and confused. But I have a potential answer, and honestly it's the only one that makes sense. Xbox wants more people buying Game Pass, so the games that they put on there are to incentivize more people to see that Game Pass is worth it, because look at all these awesome games that are definitely not going to be taken down in 6 months. But the reason that most people played Hi-Fi Rush is because they already paid for Game Pass, and therefore didn't have to take a risk when deciding to play Hi-Fi Rush. And then, when those people recommended Hi-Fi Rush to non-Game Pass owners, people probably just bought the game on its own rather than getting Game Pass because it's the one game that they are interested in on this entire service. So while Hi-Fi Rush succeeded in selling Hi-Fi Rush, it seemed to fail to sell Game Pass. Even though Game Pass was the whole reason that Hi-Fi Rush existed in the first place, it also seemed to be the reason that the company behind Hi-Fi Rush was axed. It's either that, or Todd Howard was so mad that Starfield won literally 0 awards at the Game Awards that he went on a rampage killing studios left and right. But my theory seems to hold more stability than Todd Howard. And if things couldn't get worse, Xbox had the fucking audacity to tweet out the very next day after shutting down Tango GameWorks, "We need smaller games that give us prestige and awards." Hey, come here, come a little closer. A little bit closer. Okay, good. Hey, thanks for watching this new style of video that I'm trying out. I'm probably gonna stick to this kind of video from here because I feel like I can do a lot more stuff creatively with this style of content. Also, getting this entire setup costed me a fuck ton of money, so I can't let that go to waste. But hey, if you enjoyed this, then check out my streams or something like that. Whenever I'm not busy with either life or working on these videos, I do playthroughs of video games on stream. It's a pretty chill time. They're usually pretty late at night, so I think that they're definitely worth checking out if you're interested. I don't really have a stream schedule because this isn't really my job as much as I'd love it to be. So basically, just the best way to know when I'm live is to hit this little button up here, and then this button will pop up, and then just hit that button there, and you'll be all set. And while you're at it, why don't you check out my back catalog? None of the videos on this channel so far, other than this one, are in this style, but they're all still pretty good watches, so I'd still recommend checking that out. And also just wait for other uploads like this one if you're interested. Also, I have a Twitter account, but you don't need to check that out, don't worry about that. Also, while you're here, check out my friend Fako's channel, and make sure you unsubscribe to that. That would help support me a lot. Alright, see ya.